Hello, my loves. Hello, Facebookers. Sorry I'm a little bit late. It's me, Gail. If you don't know who I am, I'm a soul coach and an intuitive, and I help you to connect to your inner child and to release old unwanted baggage and conditioning that you might have within you. And today we're going to be talking about the toxic feminine energy and how that kind of manifests itself. So how I look at things is that these things they all start in childhood, and they started many moons ago, way down the family line, and we just pass this conditioning on over and over and over. And some of it is because of what resides in the in consciousness on the planet at the moment. The Western world, I think, have a lot to answer for. Although we've brought many, many, many good things into the world, we've brought a lot of negativity. So really it's about that. And I wanted to dive into this today because I dived into the toxic masculine. I tried to explain it the best I could in that live stream. I did feel a little bit like I was worried about being attacked by guys, because it's one of these topics that can be very tentative. And I was trying to explain that when I'm talking about feminine and masculine energy, I'm really talking about the energy that we're pulling through. I am talking about men and women, but I'm not aiming to attack anyone. I'm just talking about the energy that has pervaded through centuries, really, and how it manifests itself today in our world. So I hope that makes sense to you. Now, after this live stream, I will tell you a little bit more about what I do. I am doing some free sessions, so basically I can take you through a little piece of what I do, where we look at your internal world and we see what blocks are coming up for you. And we look at sensitivities and limited thinking and any family conditioning. And we basically, I kind of act like a magnet. I sort of bring these things up to the surface for you to just have a look at and decide whether you want to keep them out there anymore. Most of the time there are things residing within us that really make us feel off balance. They can stop us really from finding our purpose in life. They can thwart our relationships. They can thwart our growth. So this is the work that I feel called to do, to really help you dive in and look in amongst, I kind of imagine it like a sea where there's like shipwrecks and different things in there, fish in there, sharks in there, things we're afraid of. But when we dive in, we have an opportunity to find the pearls and the golden nuggets that are hidden away in the dirt. So let's continue with the toxic feminine energy. So a few days ago when I did the toxic masculine, I was talking to you about how men have been given this image of what it is to be a man. And in order to be a full-grown man, you are a person who really doesn't communicate emotions, and you're strong all the time, and you make your mark in the world. For men, money and career can be pretty big, because that's what it means to be a man in the Western world. And for women, it obviously manifests itself slightly differently, but we have taken on quite a few of the other aspects. We've taken on career, for one. We are now people who believe that we should be able to do everything. So not just, in the 1950s or 40s, it was looking after the children, having a family, and really that was your role, was to look after the home. Well, these days it's like you have to be able to make money, you have to have a career, you have to also look after the children and keep the home and, deal with bills and everything. And I'm not saying that that is not what women should be doing or shouldn't be doing. What I'm just saying is there's an expectation that's become big in women. So they have all this pressure to have a career and a home and this kind of lifestyle, and also to be with someone by a certain age and be married by a certain age and have children by a certain age. And it's just, there's a lot of stuff that we're supposed to have and do and be. And while we're doing all of that, we're also supposed to be really sexy, and we're supposed to be switched on. This is coming from a woman. We're supposed to be, switched on to life and switched on to our sexuality. And we're supposed to be able to turn our men on, and there's all these things that are added on the top of that. Yes, there is a lot, Pavsha. There is a lot. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I actually don't believe that men think that we are going through all of that inside. There's a constant, like an up-leveling that we have to reach all the time. And the thing is, you know, we can also end up in toxic relationships where we're told this. I was in a very toxic relationship where I was constantly told I had to be all of these things and kind of like all in the one moment. So I never felt like I had any rest. And that's because the person I was with displayed the toxic masculine very well. And the thing is, I'm not berating him, because I believe that part of him was trying to grow and trying to grow away from that, but he couldn't because his conditioning was so layered up with this is how it should be, which is a whole different topic. I miss you too. And we didn't get to meet. I don't know if you're about tomorrow. I might be able to meet you then. So anyway, I wanted to just go through a few of the things, because there's a lot of things, and I've written some down and I haven't written all of them down. I haven't actually written about the whole sexuality thing. Maybe I should cover that first so I don't forget. So the whole thing of, there's a huge expectation around women being, looking, enticing, you know, in a certain way. And we are, you know, by society, really shown all the time what we're supposed to look like. You know, Photoshop is an amazing tool, but it's not so amazing when we use it against one another. And it's been really used against women to make women feel like they're not enough, like they're not the right body shape, they're not the right height, they're not the right colour of hair. You know, that's maybe why I change my hair all the time. I don't know. They're not the right fit, basically, if you don't fit this certain mould. And that has pervaded, and what, you know, throughout time, it changes. This is the deaf thing as well. It's like, you know, in Marilyn Monroe's time, it was, you had to have curves. And then in the 60s, you had to be like, you know, a stick insect and super straight. Like Twiggy was like super straight. She was like the, you know, the icon at the time. And then it changed again. We've got more curves have come back in. There are women having butt implants just so that they can be the perfect shape. And yes, like Pav was just saying, it's too much pressure. And but what this pervades as in the toxic feminine is women who don't feel safe. So there's a huge element of safety. I've got this in other parts. Women really crave feeling safe and whole and held. They want to connect with Mother Earth. They want to grow. They want to shine. They want to do all of that. And this aspect of looking at women where they are not enough because of their physical appearance means that the toxic feminine, it happens between the women. It happens where it's caused of jealousy. This jealousy stems from a lot of this between women. Women don't feel safe to be friends with other women who are beautiful. It's for a long time it wasn't okay for women to actually express that they found another woman attractive, you know, or I don't mean in a sexual way, although that might be your thing, but I mean in the sense of they just felt like there's just this pressure of being around women who are or more than you because you feel less than. And this comes from magazines, this is on TV, this comes from the unconscious, you know, collective of the belief in what women are supposed to be. And what it means is every time we're trying to reach something that's unattainable, we're not actually looking at ourselves. You know, how many times do women actually look at their bodies and say, wow, I really love my body? Like, I'm sure that I probably don't know any women who do that. Women look at themselves and they judge themselves and they dissect themselves. They look at parts of themselves and judge whether those parts are right or wrong. And then because of that, they are fragmented and not complete, because there's always something that they need to fix about themselves. So a lot of the toxic feminine energy really starts from there. And also it starts in the psyche as a young child. So the work that I do, I talk a lot about the inner child, which is really the wounds that you carry from, you know, really the ages between 0 and 7 or after. But at that time, you're like a psychic sponge. So if you have caregivers who are telling you you're lovable when you're quiet, but you're unlovable when you're loud, then you put away your leadership skills for the time being, and you don't let them back out for a very long time. And you usually end up manifesting being too much around certain people, because that stuff flies out because you keep squashing it and suppressing it. So I kind of work with that. And so part of the way that we end up with the toxic feminine energy is that we are constantly being judged on the outside for how we look. And, you know, we're constantly judged on the inside for, well, I guess on the outside as well, for who we're being. But basically that's your personality. And, you know, down the generations, beauty has been valued when it comes to women, and intelligence too. But it's kind of like you couldn't be both. There's that horrible thing of Legally Blonde does it so well. You cannot be intelligent and beautiful at the same time. So I love that film for that, because it really pulls it out and points at it. And what this leads to is, when I talk about the fragmentation of women's psyche around themselves, because they literally fragmented, like looking at themselves, you know, are my boobs big enough? Is my belly flat enough? You know, is my butt round enough these days? Is it like J-Lo or, you know, one of the Kardashians or something? Then it means that the natural empathy that we have for ourselves, not just for others, kind of diminishes. We start to berate ourselves. We lose the mother, the natural mother, the nurturer within, and that voice starts to diminish. And that is the parental voice, really. You know, it's the same for the masculine. We want to develop a strong king within. We want to develop a strong parental, compassionate, divine masculine voice within. And what happens within women is, because we're so judgmental of ourselves, and then we are paranoid about other women and other people, even men, we're paranoid about men, which I'll get onto in a minute. Some warranted, some not. So we have this paranoia. We lose the care of the self. So the natural mother within disappears. And we start to try and navigate the world based on, I guess, the male dynamics that really have pervaded the Western world. We're no longer really going in the flow. We're no longer attached and connected to our intuition. We are just going through the mundane. So I'm going to jump, actually, because that sort of ties in with one of my point. Where is it? Yeah, I was talking about body wisdom. So our intuition, women's intuition, is very strong. And when we lose the mother and the nurturer, we lose the archetypal crone, which is the next stage. So the crone, for many people, is seen as a kind of a scary little lady, the one who comes and gives Snow White the apple so that she bites it and she falls asleep. But, sorry, someone's ringing me. Sorry, person ringing. Sorry, ringing again. Nightmare. Hello, Danielle. Thanks for joining. Hello, Carrie and Pavisha. I'm not sure who else is here. Rochelle, Katie, Gavin, Damien. I don't know if all of you guys are still here, but sorry about that. I was just getting cut off because someone was ringing. So the crone really started out as the archetypal witch, the Wonder Woman of intuition, the Wonder Woman of speech and spells and all of that juicy stuff that got squashed out of society. You know, we started to be seen as these scary people. And some of it, I believe, was because, you know, of at the time male dominance and the that women were squashed and basically their power was taken away from them. And this manifests itself as a lack of intuition, a lack of body wisdom. So it was the witch that was denied within us. And what we want to do is in order to really help to get connected back to the body, is to stop denying all of the self, to really start truly loving ourselves, and to be fully committed to the path of learning who we are. Now, this does take work, and it's the same for men, really. It's the same for men. It's a denial of emotions. This is how toxic energy, whether it's masculine or feminine, just manifests itself slightly differently. It's got all the same source. It's a denial of who we really are. It's a denial of the emotions. And also an inability to navigate the emotions. And we don't really fully understand what's going on, especially if we've grown up with this from a young age. We just end up really constantly looking outside in order to find out who we are. Instead of looking within to find out who we are, we're judging ourselves from what's around us in our environment. So the crone is the archetype of the crone doesn't need any of that. In fact, the crone, I guess when you think about the crone, she doesn't really care about how she looks outside, does she? She is the archetypal wise woman who teaches the young women how to navigate the world, how to be in the world. She teaches them how to use herbs, and she teaches them how to understand men, perhaps. And she teaches them about connecting to themselves consciously. And she uses spells, and, you know, she believes in intuitive guidance, and she's connected to Mother Nature. And we've lost that. We lose that when we look out to the world to define who we are. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you. Hello, Erica and Helen. Thank you for joining. And then the other part of this is that women have lost this because women crave safety. So I said that safety is a huge thing. Women love to feel safe. Women don't have, I believe anyway, most of us, maybe not all of us, but most of us with a strong feminine essence, we like safety. And I think some of this stems from the fact that, you know, especially when you have children, you want to feel like you have support and care and structure, and the feminine still, you know, that's the craving of the masculine energy, but the feminine still wants to be free and free to feel the emotions in her body and to really connect to other people in a nurturing and caring way and to feel her intuition. But she also kind of craves the masculine energy, which is the divine masculine, which is solid and strong and present within herself and also within, you know, a partnership. And women have become insecure because there's really not much presence in the world anymore. There's a lot of self-seeking. There's a lot of, you know, there's just, you know, if I look at politics, I keep coming back to politics, you see that pervading all over the planet at the moment. There's a lot about the sort of selfish drive in the world. There's not a lot about community, although I think that's changing. You know, people are doing live streams and building communities now and gathering together and wanting to grow in the knowledge of the masculine and feminine energy and help to understand one another where we get stuck. But in the 3D world, there's still a lot of divisiveness between men and women and the masculine and feminine energy. And this causes conflict within. So, as I was saying, women really crave safety. And women, because of the dynamics of the world, the fight for votes and the fights to be paid the same as men and the fight to have career when we have children and all of these different things, we have been a people who've been very unsupported in our growth, and we've had to kind of band together and do it together whilst keep being shown all the ways that all the things that we're not, which makes us paranoid of each other. It's like this weird cycle that goes round. And the key really is that to be truly vulnerable, right? To be really open and vulnerable and exposed whilst you're still being strong and feminine is every woman's dream. Really, like the wild woman underneath the natural woman wants to be vulnerable and accepted. But we've learned that vulnerability isn't sexy, and vulnerability isn't of the world, I guess, right? It's a do toxic masculine energy in the world. And so what that means is that we actually never inherently feel truly safe. Somewhere underneath there's always this little paranoia and doubt because of what's pervading outside. It means that when we look inside, we don't quite fully feel really solid. I mean, I think the most times that I've really felt truly myself is when I've been around other women who are really truly willing to go into vulnerability with me. And men, actually, you know, male friends of mine, it's the same. Vulnerability comes from, I believe, more so a feminine energy space because it's very, very, I want to say heart-led. And that's simply because when I'm talking about energy, not men and women, that the toxic masculine energy in my world is very disconnected from heart. It's very head-led. It's about how it's seen in the world, what it is in the world, what it does, what it creates, but not really in a heart-led space. Yeah, Danielle says, 100% agree. I'm glad you're agreeing with me because sometimes I think what I'm saying is maybe flies above over people's heads. Erica also says, yes, I agree. Awesome. And what I'm really keen on and I feel very passionate about is that people understand that this all really stems from how we're trained emotionally. We're trained to... some of it is what's happening in the world. Some of it definitely is that. But we're also trained in a specific way, especially like I've gone about school and how we are in our families. We've been taught to not trust one another. We've been taught that there's competition. Danielle says, logical but not emotional. Yes, exactly. So I would say that toxic masculine energy is highly logical. And, you know, divine masculine energy is logical, but it's also safe. It's also just presence. Like I had a call with a lovely gentleman yesterday who I think I'll be doing some work with. And we were talking about this thing with presence and that he was trying to find his connection to his divine masculine. He's trying to find his connection to his inner child by logically trying to process it. And he told me the story about connecting with his child where he didn't do anything but be present. I mean, it was like, to me, it was a very beautiful way he told the story. So if you're watching, it was a lovely story. And I said to him, well, why should it be any different when you want to connect with yourself or anybody else in that divine masculine way? Why do you have to logically try and reason it out and find the thing, right? It's not. A lot of the time that energy is just, you know, it's like in a movie, I guess it's an extreme, but where the masculine is just super present and the woman just melts in the midst of his presence. He doesn't even really have to say very much at all. That's the divine masculine. The toxic masculine energy is the analytical, thinker. Too much so, right? There is toxic feminine energy, though, when it comes to analytical thinking, when you're disconnected from your body. So the toxic feminine would be the warrior. She would be the warrior. This becomes victimization. Victimization can be learned behavior. And it can also be because of things happening in your world where we become super victimized by our circumstances. And then the feminine mind, because it's all joined together, nothing's really in boxes, everything's all connected, adds all these things, it links all these things up. And sometimes you'll find, or I find when working with people, that someone has had a pain point in some part of their life. Say something happened when they're 10, and they've then linked it to something that happened when they were 21, which links to something that happened when they were 32. And sometimes there's a pattern, but sometimes it's actually just they had a belief at 10, they were wounded at 10, and then this creates some kind of weird trail throughout the psyche. So women can be overthinkers and over-worriers, and this creates this lack of safety. Danielle says, yes, yes, and says accepting. I'm not sure, sorry, because it was in my flow. I'm not sure what accepting means. Hello, Suzanne. Hello, Jess and Kyle. Hello, Jess, how are you? I haven't seen you in such a long time. Hello, Kyle. Thanks for joining. So, yeah, so women can be terrible overthinkers, and I've seen this like a pattern of overthinking and a pattern of paranoia. And also what I want to touch on is, let me just jump to what I've put. Yeah, it can lead to things like manipulation, and it can lead to emasculination. So because women have felt unsafe, and some of it, as I said, is warranted, unfortunately, men have caused most of the wars on the planet. I don't know if any women have caused wars, possibly. But, I spoke to someone the other day about, there was a friend of mine who was approached by a guy, and he's actually a guy. And I spoke to another friend about this. He was saying that, this friend of mine was like, this guy's following me, and he's like, he's creepy and he's showing interest in me. Like now he's saying to me in a really dark, quiet place, like, that he wants to, me to go off and sleep with him. And someone had posted back, this is what women feel every day. And this is what sparked this, driving me to talk about the masculine and feminine, because I don't think, or to the toxic masculine, toxic feminine, is because I don't think men realise that women are walking down, streets. It might not even be that late at night. And there is that thing in the back of your head, like about having to look out for yourself, right? There is that all the time. And it's actually painful for us to have to do that because we don't want to believe that of anybody. We don't want to believe that that's possible. So while my male friend found this like weird and creepy, many women who read that thought, well, that happens to me. That happens regularly, or that is a fear that I have regularly. So this creates paranoia, right? I see that often too. Erica says, yeah. And Danielle says it was further back in your comments. I don't know what that is. I'll go back and look after, sweetheart. I can't remember, sorry. I get so sidetracked. It's really difficult for me sometimes when I get in the flow and then I try to catch up with people's comments and I'm like, where was I? That's being a woman, I think, sometimes getting distracted. So, the toxic masculine has meant that women have, because we don't feel safe because there's so much toxic masculinity. And I'm not blaming men again, but what I am saying is that men don't realise they have a choice. Or not all men. There are men who are growing, but a lot of men don't realise they have a choice. And a lot of women don't realise they have a choice. We have a choice when we become adults of how much we're willing to look at ourselves and how much we're willing to grow. The people who have worked with me the best have been the ones that have said, I don't care how painful this is, I need to grow. It's too painful being back there, believing what I believe, feeling the way that I feel. I need to move forward. I need to see a better way. So when you get to that point, and you're ready to do the inner work, then you go and find books that teach you. You speak to someone like me that can help you. You do things that it's going to take to get to a more conscious level of understanding of the self. Because the reason that all these things are happening is because we don't understand ourselves fully. We don't understand our drivers. We don't understand our pain points. We don't really know what they are. So they just pervade. And this is what happens when things fall into shadow. We lose parts of ourselves and we become a part of the matrix, which is the paranoia that's generated in the world and the ways that we are, what's the word? I want to say depressed. I don't mean that. I mean repressed. Like watching loads of TV, watching EastEnders, and things like that. Hello, Bruno. Thanks for joining. And Donna. Erica says, yes, we always get to choose. We do. I once had in a meditation this line which said, who are you choosing to be? And the emphasis was on the choosing. So that kept going around my head for days, was who am I choosing to be? Who am I choosing to be? What am I choosing in every moment? Like, am I choosing here to just think these thoughts about a situation or a person and not speak them? Oh, let's notice that, Am I choosing to feel anxious? Am I choosing, what part of me is working here? This is what led me to doing the work that I do, because I wanted to understand myself, and I could understand certain people's triggers. I could see things in people. So, now as an intuitive, I can tap into much more. But at the time when that first started, I just knew I could feel people's feelings. I could see what was going on. But I could also see that they couldn't see. They didn't know why they were doing it, because most people aren't looking. And then I found that I wasn't looking at me. I wasn't looking at me at all. I was looking at everybody else going, oh, they've got that, and she's got this, and he's got that, and they do that. Oh man, that's trouble. I wasn't looking at myself. And when I started to look at myself, that was when I guess I became an advocate and a little bit of an addict of looking at people's stuff and my stuff, because I really got curious. I really wanted to learn about what it was going to take to become more conscious. And, I have to say to all of you out there, sometimes it's going to be painful. I believe that looking at ourselves is painful, but that's why we walk about the world generally wearing masks and not really being our full self, because we're always trying to be someone else. We're always trying to fit in or be good enough or be lovable enough. And we're not really diving in and looking at the self, right? Yeah, Erica says, haha, one finger forward, 3 points back. Yeah, exactly. I was still doing that. I was like, oh my God, he's got this, she's got that. And really, I couldn't see things that I was doing. I'll maybe talk about that another day, but there were things that I was doing. And actually, I was being a bit of a victim in my family. I felt as if I didn't like some of the energy that was pervading in my family. And there was a lot of toxic energy. Oh, well, there you go. So there's one of the toxic feminine, which is bitching. So one of the ways that, and this all comes back to safety again. So one of the ways that we can feel safe, and this is like watching EastEnders, is if we see someone else going through something that they're worse off than us, then we feel better. It's like, it creates this warped sense of safety. So that was kind of going on. It was like this constant looking at other people in a negative way. And I really didn't feel comfortable with it. And the more that I was waking up to myself, the more I started to notice this dynamic of like, wow, this is how they connect here. Like everyone connects in speaking badly about someone else. And what's really happening there is that obviously there's judgment, but it's an inability to speak your truth because of fear of what happens next. And then you don't feel safe. So this thing with safety in the feminine is really key. And any men watching, if you don't understand why your woman is playing out, this is not for all women, because there might be narcissistic women, there are some of them. But for most women, if your woman is playing out and getting upset and or just in a mood and you don't know what it is, sometimes she won't know what the hell it is. It might be PMS, but a lot of the time it just comes down to safety, where women are just really looking to feel more solid, because sometimes the emotions that we feel can be so big that we just need something solid to make us feel safe. Like a house, we need just this, like, we want someone just to build us a little house that we can go be in or just be held, right? I spoke to a client earlier today, and I said to her that one of the ways around this is actually learning to be responsible for your emotions. So a huge key in really connecting to yourself and your vulnerability and your femininity for women, but this also works for men. Although I think men struggle with vulnerability a bit more, is when you are vulnerable and you're feeling all of these emotions, is to write the emotions down, write whatever comes up, and then look at it from a parental point of view, as if you were speaking to a child. What would you say to that child? And as the parent, define what you need in that moment. What does your inner child, your scaredy cat, this little, this thing need, this afraid person need in that moment? We cannot expect other people to meet us where we're at with that. We just can't expect them to know what we need. Because most of us as adults, unfortunately, do not know how to navigate someone else's emotions because we don't know how to navigate ours. How can we possibly know what to do if we haven't really, looked at the world within us? How can we have enough space to hold it for someone else? So we can't expect that somebody else should be able to hold the space for us. So it's important that we have vulnerability with responsibility. So be vulnerable so you can be your true nature, but use it responsibly by knowing what you need, by defining what you need and asking for it. This is where it gets tricky because we're really super afraid to ask for things. And I believe that women in particular are afraid of asking for things because somewhere we feel like we're supposed to man up. Like women have started to feel like they have to man up as much as men have been told they have to man up from the age of 10 or 5 or whatever it is. Women have started to feel the same, right? Erica said that's so true, yeah. Taking responsibility for ourselves is absolutely key in becoming more conscious. It's absolutely key in becoming more balanced when you're going through crap times in your life. It's the key in relationships. It's the key, did I say that already? It's the key in lots of things in life. So, so the toxic, because of the toxic masculine energy that has pervaded through time now, women have felt the need to compete, right? Women have competed for the vote, have competed against men to, get better wages. They have competed because the dynamics change and we could put our children into school and we could go to work and we were like, why should we not have what they have? So we've started to compete. So this means that actually many of us have taken on an aspect of the toxic masculine, which is that logical, analytical, and just driven, and I'm going to do that. But we also have the added extra of, I'm an independent woman, right? All the women, all right, let's go Beyonce. So we have that thing of like, we're going to be everything and we're going to do what men do, but we're going to do everything else. So there's this thing of competing with men, right? Hello, Christoph. I think that's how you say it. Tyner. Hello. Thanks for joining. And also what this has done is we've also learned, because we don't feel safe around men, and actually especially the Queen's Code talks about this. Alison Armstrong talks about this. I really love her work. She's very pro-men, which I like as well. Is that we've learned to emasculinate men because of how we feel around, it's like if men are sexualizing us, if we're becoming sexual objects, they're not actually seeing us. That whole, piss take, excuse my French, on is the guy looking at my eyes? Is he looking somewhere else? So because we're shown in society that women are objectified all the time, and we don't want to be objectified. We want someone to meet us on a heart and soul level and with intelligence, and we want that. Women learn to emasculinate men by just taking them down a peg or two, because it makes them safer. And I've witnessed this over and over again. There's a trait in my family that I could see. It was like, actually, one of the ways that we create humor is by emasculination. And that actually, for the guys, must be really painful and uncomfortable. Danielle says, it's exhausting having both energies playing out in one person. Yeah, exactly. It is. And a lot of women are tired. Women are tired of having to be everything that they're not really truly. They're tired of being everything of the world and not really feeling and knowing and honouring themselves. They're so tired. And this is why I'm so loving the work of like some people. I was watching Steph, I've totally forgot his last name. I'm sorry, Steph. Australian guy talking about the masculine and feminine energies a lot at the moment. Javon Langford's also doing amazing work with men. I'm really, really, really keen that we teach our men that it's okay to be with emotions, that it's okay to be with feeling, to help men understand what women are going through. Because I believe that that's a huge key in transforming the consciousness of the planet, because the toxic masculine has been so dominant for such a long time. It's caused this, it's like a domino effect. And women have now lost their true feminine essence. I mean, it's there, but we're not really tapping into it and being connected with the intuition. This is what I'm talking about when I'm saying feminine energy. I'm talking about the intuition, the connection with the planet, the connection to each other, the connection to our children, and the connection to men. Like, it's funny because men there is this thing of like men, when they're really connected to a woman, they really want her to open up. And women are really terrified of opening up because there's so much toxic energy around men with abandonment and just being sexualized, aggression, all of these things that have pervaded. Women don't trust. So there's huge trust issues going on, huge heart blocks. So women also had to sort of step into using some of the toxic masculine energy because they had to survive and become more independent. They wanted to rise up. So women have taken on some of that. But again, this just means that we generally, within ourselves, don't feel particularly safe. So those are just some of the things, because I've not got long, I need to go shortly. Those are just some of the things, the ways that we display a toxic feminine. And toxic feminine energy can be spinning out of control in anger, the same way that toxic masculine energy can be. It can be complete paranoia, overthinking. It can be bitching. Bitching is huge as a toxic feminine energy because we're afraid, we don't feel safe, so we bitch instead. And all of this just stops us from really looking at the roots of it. Hello, Patrick. Thanks for... I think, Patrick, you were here a minute ago. You're back again. So for anybody who's here who would like to learn more about the true feminine energy, along with working with me, if you have any blocks that you want to look at, that could be something that's happened in your childhood, that could be, an energy that's pervading through you at the moment. You might be continually angry. You might be depressed. You might be someone who keeps having toxic relationships. Then I'm totally happy to do a free session with you to see if I can help uncover anything there. And we can do more work if you then decide you like it, if we find anything. But I also encourage you to read a book called Women Who Run with the Wolves. I forgot what it was called for a minute. Women Who Run with the Wolves. There's a little story in there about the red shoes, which I think is a German story, about the feminine nature, where the little girl, Danielle says, yes, yes, yes. The little girl in the story is a little girl who lives on her own, and she doesn't have a family. But the thing is, she's truly, absolutely connected to the feminine nature. She's connected to Mother Earth. She actually is the start of the archetypal crone, right? The crone is the grown woman, the older woman who can mentor, who's an elder, right? Who's been through all the things that, life has given her and learned how to navigate it and knows the ways of the world. Hello, Romy. Thanks for joining. And so she knows how to navigate the world. And this little girl is the start of her, and she's connected to Mother Earth, and she's learned how to, collect herbs and make food. And she, even though she doesn't have people around her, she's learned how to make her own shoes. And these little red shoes that she's made are not perfect. They're darned funny, but she loves them because she created them, right? Feminine energy is creative, right? So I could go on about the masculine and feminine energy for ages. Feminine energy is creative. Feminine energy within everybody is the creative source. She's the one with the vision. The masculine energy is the one that helps to create and makes it, and it appears in the 3D, right? So this little girl had a great balance of being connected to the feminine, and she's created these shoes and she loves them. But this little old lady rocks up in her fancy carriage and sees this little girl, and through no fault of her own, she sees her and she wants to save her. She wants to make her life better. So she takes this little girl away in the carriage. And she takes this girl to her home. And she gets rid of her drab clothes. And she gives her new clothes. And she says to her, we must get rid of those shoes. And she takes the shoes away from the girl. And the girl doesn't want to give the shoes away. But because she feels like this woman is giving her something more than she has already. Which probably includes safety, interestingly. Because she's not on her own anymore, you see. And women crave that. She lets the woman take her shoes. And the woman gives her a little pair of black shoes, or takes her to get some black shoes. And in the visit to get the black shoes, to go to church, I might add, I think was the story, she sees these red shoes sitting on the shelf. And these are like the most brilliant, shiny red shoes that she's ever seen. And she really wants these red shoes. They remind her of her internal self. They remind her of her creation, her red shoes, which came from her, which are of her, which are her feminine creativity and essence. And she wants these red shoes. And because the little woman cannot see, this little old woman is a bit unconscious. The man who is serving the shoes, I think he's supposed to be like the archetypal devil, I guess, the tempter. He gives her these red shoes. Then the old lady thinks she has the black shoes. So she goes off with these red shoes. And the next Sunday when they go to church, this little girl has the red shoes on. And everyone is completely affronted. Which to me is what society says and has said for many, many generations about the feminine energy. Which is it's witch-like and it's too powerful. It's all-consuming. It's not contained. And so everyone in this church is looking at this little child like she is, really gone over the boundaries. You're never supposed to wear red shoes to church. And so the little girl is kind of hounded for this. And when the woman finds out, she's very angry. And she takes the shoes away and she hides them. And she makes the little girl have some boring shoes. But the little girl, I forget exactly what happens, but I think the little girl in the story basically craves these shoes so much that eventually one day, that it's become such a huge thing. One day she finds them and she puts them on and she starts to dance. She's so happy that she's finally connected with these red shoes. But the end of the story is actually kind of horrible. She dances off through the village and she never comes back. And I think the end of the story is actually that she dies wearing these red shoes because she's become totally addicted to them. They've danced off with her. She can't stop. And this is really to show what's happened to women, is that we've lost the connection with ourselves, our true nature, which is, and lost the connection that we are actually the creator of that. We are the ones who can create and nurture ourselves. We didn't really need other people. We didn't need something outside of us to make us feel safe, but we still crave it. We still crave it. And we still want to fit in, right? But the desire of the connection to the true nature of ourselves becomes so much that we can get caught up. And I see it these days in people doing plant medicines over and over and over and over, right? Plant medicine is amazing. I've done some in order to connect with myself, but this continual looking and seeking outside of ourselves. And it can also be things like, connecting to, I guess, religions and other things like that. It can be even in the workplace, trying to fit in. Excuse me. So like, women going into a very male-dominated workforce, women will feel like they have to be more like men a lot of the time. So really it's just a little story that's depicting that, and that when women, or if women, don't connect to their true inspiring intuition from within, the body wisdom from within, and create from there, that they will seek it outside of themselves. And this can lead to addictions, even addictions to certain emotions, addictions to relationships, or choosing toxic relationships. Sorry, I'll read that just a second, Patrick. But that is what happens, is this huge craving. I believe men have it as well. I believe that men, hello Ella. I believe that men have this too. It manifests itself differently. But it basically is coming from the same place. Like all of this is to say to you that when you don't really connect to your true nature, when you don't really understand your true emotional nature, then we lose the responsibility we have for ourselves and we kind of look outside. And the only way that we're going to really solve anything within ourselves and outside is to go within first and really check in with ourselves, and then to really connect with each other, men and women connecting together and growing together. I think on Steph's live stream earlier, someone said we're a team, and that's how it should be. You know, and he tears up with that. We should be a team. We should be really building and growing together as men and women and understanding one another so that we can step into a new paradigm, and teaching our children this. Like, it's so important that we teach our children this, because, you know, I have a daughter. I don't want her to feel like she cannot be the fullness of who she is, and that she has to be afraid of being in the world. And that, you know, even the simple thing of walking down the street at night, I don't want my child walking down the street at night feeling fear in her because of toxic masculine energy. I'd much rather be able to say, you know, it's a free world where you can walk down the street, and whenever you see a man walking down the street next to you, that you feel safe because he's there. That actually hurts when I say that. But that's what that is, you know? So the feminine energy has become twisted. A lot of it is because of the toxic masculine. And I'm not saying that we should be angry about this, because the anger about it is part of the problem. We should be able to get to awareness, right? Awareness first, forgiveness for what, you know, people have done that they didn't know they were doing. And we are also a part of the chain. When we become angry and we diminish and emasculinate men because of the toxic masculine energy, we don't give them a chance to evolve into conscious divine masculine energy. We actually become part of the problem. And this is why it's so divisive. It's hidden in the realms of the unseen. We just keep repeating the patterns. It goes round and round and round. And really, it's we need to be patient, but we also need to stand up. And we need to talk to men and tell them how we're truly feeling. We have to get back to vulnerability, which is a true feminine essence. We have to get back to our heart space. We have to stand up as heart-led warriors and say, this is okay and this isn't. And we have to really, really make sure that we are super connected with ourselves, that we know deep down who we are, that we know what we need, and take the responsibility of telling the world what we actually need without expecting that other people can give us it, because we don't know what leg of the journey they're on yet. That all sounds really complicated, but it's not really. It's just the responsibility aspect is for us, is for the connection with other women. Women need to start seeing other women in their beauty and their power, and not being afraid that if one woman is in her beauty and her power, then it means that she's taken away from you. She's absolutely not. Women like that, if they're truly in their feminine energy, if they're connected to the crone, will only want to give you the same and help you to be the same. It's the same with divine masculine. Some men who are in their divine masculine, they only want for other men to grow into and accept the divine masculine energy, right? People who are conscious have no interest in, you know, beating each other up or diminishing each other. We only want to elevate and to encompass all. So I'm going to go back and just read what Petri said. So much of what you are saying is so powerful and strong and real. A lot of it feeds into what I have been writing about in my new book on empowering femininity. Awesome. I will check it out, Patrick. And Ella says, just wanted to text you. Well, you can, my love. Hi, Giselle. I'm just about to pop off now because this has been quite a long one. So that's what I wanted to say. And if you felt this resonated at all, feel free to share it with any of your friends, male or female, who might need help. And as I said, I'm doing some free sessions this week, probably later in the week because I'm traveling a couple of days. If you would like a session with me where we dive into any blocks that you have, connect with your inner child, help to really cultivate a parental, compassionate and soul-loving voice within, then get in touch with me and I can book you a little slot in. And there's no obligation to work with me afterwards. You can if you like, and you don't have to if you don't. But I would love it if you would. I am here to help you grow and evolve and step into the next level of you. That's my wish for the planet. It's so big at the moment. So anyway, guys, I'm going to go. Thank you for joining, and I love you all. Mwah! Bye.